Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to OpenGov TV. I have the distinct pleasure of having Mr. Siva over here, who is the Deputy General Secretary for Digital Government, Ministry of Digital Malaysia, as well as Eklavya Bhave, Head of Asia for Coursera. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Mohit. Thanks for inviting.
Absolutely,
Hello,
sir.
Mohit. Nice, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, good to see you again, Eklavya. So today we'll be discussing equipping Malaysia's public sector with future-ready skills. Now let's dig down a little bit. What does that really mean? As the digital economy grows, Malaysia is prioritizing efforts to prepare its public sector workforce for the evolving demands of government projects and services. Fair enough. Now, through initiatives like the MyDIGITAL plan, which aims to position Malaysia as a regional leader in digital transformation, the country is focusing on equipping government employees with essential skills in emerging technologies. This objective is crucial not only for meeting crucial current projects, but also for the enhancing public sector service deliveries and resilience in the rapid changing landscape. To meet these goals, Malaysia government or public sector training programs are emphasizing 5 key technological areas: cybersecurity, AI or Gen AI, which has become the most common word in 2024-2025, IoT, semiconductors, and cloud computing. Now, they're not restricting themselves just to this. Additionally, these programs focus on strengthening digital literacy and fostering critical interpersonal skills in communication, collaboration, and problem solving, ensuring that the public sector employees are all well prepared to work effectively in a digitally integrated environment. We're going to focus today on the solutions that help bridge the gap in the public sector, empowering government employees to be agile, digital proficient, and capable of delivering high-impact services. Right? So the big question comes over here is, how can Malaysia foster continuous learning in public sector while aligning digital literacy, training, and technical adaptiveness to make sure that service delivery is at the highest level? How can partnerships between government, educational institutions, industry leaders address these skill gaps and support both technical and interpersonal skills? And lastly, the innovation. So learning the solutions, how do we upskill public sector employees in Malaysia, and how can these online platforms like Coursera give them flexible, accredited training to support skills building in high demand sectors? Mr. Siva, once again, good morning, sir. And let me start with you. As Malaysia navigates the challenges of modern governance, a skill-first approach has become crucial in preparing the public sector to meet the demands of evolving digital landscape. What digital skills do you consider essential for enhancing the efficiency and the adaptability of Malaysia's public sector employees?
Thank you, Mohit. It's a pleasure to join you this morning. I think it's a very right, timely question they're asking, as Malaysia is trying to skill up our entire public sector workforce. So the digital competencies required for public sector employees can be categorized into 3 main skills area, i.e. core digital skills, advanced digital skills, and future-oriented digital skills. This is how the government is looking at it now. And these competencies are essential for enhancing public sector efficiency, supporting national digital transformation goals, and preparing Malaysia's workforce for the 4th industrial revolution. So first, let me touch upon the core digital skills that I talked about. Core digital skills form the foundation and digital proficiency in the public sector, ensuring employees can navigate digital tools and protect sensitive information. One of the most fundamental competencies is basic digital literacy, which involves the ability to confidently use productivity tools such as Microsoft Office or Google Workspace, and navigate government portals and online databases, and manage emails and digital communications effectively. And these skills enable civil servants to work efficiently and collaboratively in digital-first environment. Second, I'll touch upon a little bit on the advanced digital skills that I mentioned earlier. This would involve advanced digital skills which are to enable data-driven decision-making, automation, and efficient service delivery. And this would also include data analytics and visualization, which is a key skills that enable government employees to analyze and interpret data for informed policy making. For example, the Ministry of Digital can use data analytics to track the progress of Malaysia's digital economy initiatives, helping policymakers to identify gaps and monitor MSME digitalization and adjust strategies to accelerate economic growth. On top of that, AI and machine learning also plays a crucial role in automating administrative tasks, improving citizen interactions, and enhancing policy analysis. Employees trained in AI will be equipped to leverage predictive analytics, real-time decision-making, and also automation, ultimately improving public service delivery. Cloud computing is another critical skill for modernizing public sector operations. And by leveraging cloud-based infrastructure, government agencies can scale the digital services efficiently, reduce IT costs, and enhance security. And for instance, the Ministry of Digital is utilizing cloud computing to deploy secure e-government platforms, ensuring seamless online services, and also real-time data processing and AI-driven automation. As far as future-oriented digital skills are concerned, this would enable for the government to stay ahead in digital era. Public sector employees must develop these skills to enable them to be agile in terms of governance and ethical digital practices. And this would be essential in ensuring responsible and ethical use of emerging technologies such as AI, big data, and blockchain. And government employees must be well-versed in data privacy regulations, AI transparency, and ethical decision-making.
Thank you for that. Actually, that's very comprehensive. And you're absolutely right. With the emergence of such technologies such as Gen AI and the democratization of it, the word ethical is coming into becoming big on mainstream in the IT space. Eklavya, let's take this to the next level, please. How are platforms like Coursera collaborating with government to equip the public sector with essential skills in emerging technologies such as, again, Gen AI, data science, and cybersecurity, to say a few?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Mr. Siva, because your response gave me a lot of inputs to frame up my response as well. When it comes to public sector, right, unlike a corporate sector where they build the skill for themselves, public sector employees build the skills not only for themselves, but to help the citizens and to serve the citizens better. Unlike corporate sector, the public sector has two different challenges. One is because not every public sector employee is based in Kuala Lumpur or Singapore, they would be based across smaller cities and towns and also in villages. So there are two issues when it comes to upskilling and specifically around digital skills. First is access, and though both kinds of access. First is the access to digital infrastructure, and second is the access to content. And Coursera platform helps solve both the problems. Because when it comes to online learning, a lot of people think that they need to invest a lot of money in digital infrastructure, getting desktops and high-speed internet, while in fact on Coursera platform, you can learn on the mobile app as well, and everybody has a mobile these days. Second is the access to content. So even if you're not in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, where you have some of the best of the universities, on Coursera platform with your mobile, you can learn from Yale, Stanford, Illinois, Google, the top industry content and university content on Coursera. So that solves for both access to the content as well as infrastructure. Now, I'll give you 2 or 3 small examples on how we are working with different governments in the Asia Pacific region to develop some of these skills. First, I can think of an example of a country, Uzbekistan. And when you think of Uzbekistan, you would not think of IT economy. And Uzbekistan government is trying to develop the country into an IT export hub. And that's why they have an ambition of having 1 million Uzbekistan residents to be trained and upskilled in coding, in generative AI, etc. And we are working with Uzbek government and Ministry of Digital in Uzbekistan for that purpose. Second is closer in Taiwan. So we're working with NDC, which is Civil Services Institute in Taiwan, to upskill the civil servants in Taiwan on both leadership, digital content, and very specific language as well. When we think of public sector employees, we a lot of times forget the language aspect as well. In many countries in Asia, English is not the first language. And third, coming even closer, where Mr. Siva is Malaysia. So we're working with Intan, which is an institute which is responsible for upskilling of public sector employees. So we've been working with Intan to help public sector employees get upskilled in some of these leadership skills that I talked about, but also very critical are some of the digital skills that Mohit, you mentioned and Mr. Siva mentioned, which is around data, cybersecurity, and cloud. So these are some of the examples that I could think of.
No, thank you for that. And that's a pretty interesting example of Uzbekistan. You're absolutely right. It doesn't compute. And I'm glad that you can bring that up to the forefront so people are aware that nations all over the world are on this journey. And it's not limited to just a few. So moving on, okay, I'm going to throw this question out to both of you, if I may. What are the key challenges in scaling upskilling programs? Because for public sector, and how do we overcome this to make it more sustainable? Because the impact needs to be ongoing, and this is not a one-off. Mr. Siva, let me start with you, please.
Okay. I think some of the challenges has been briefly touched by Eklavya earlier, but I think as far as the government is concerned, it's a large organization, and we have a diverse range of people with different skill sets and different level of digital literacy and so on. So we need to probably first do a profiling and make a custom-made, which is tailored towards the needs of the employees based on the requirement of the job and skill, which meets what is expected of them. To ensure that the delivery of these training programs meets its objective. So first, one of the challenges we see is in terms of having some limited access to the digital infrastructure. This could be both in terms of connectivity or even sometimes where it's rural and a very remote place. This also involves limited devices or hardware. So we need to ensure that they have proper infrastructure in order for them to access to these trainings. Second, we see commonly, which is the resistance to change and low adoption rate. I think this is more towards, some would feel that how they're going to benefit from the training skills. They don't foresee that it's essential to ensure they keep up with the changes in terms of skills that's required to perform the future tasks, which may be very different from what they are doing today. So this is something that we need to address, where the attitude and also the behavioral kind of a thing that we need to address in terms of ensuring the large population of the civil servants are properly equipped with these skills. The other challenge I would see is the skills gap and mismatch training content. A critical issue in digital upskilling is the mismatch, where one-size-fits-all training approach may not necessarily address the specific needs. This I mentioned earlier. And for example, a policy officer may need training in data-driven policy making, while IT administrator may require advanced cloud computing skill. And we need to really ensure that they are given the proper training and skill sets. Of course, the other challenges we see most of the time is the issue of balancing workload with learning commitments is also an important thing, where many public sector offices struggle to find time for training while managing their daily responsibilities. In addition, the rapid change in terms of technological aspect further complicates the upskilling efforts, because probably what they learned a year ago is something they need to relearn again in a shorter time. I think this is very common nowadays for them to upkeep with the changes that's happening. And probably one last thing is to ensure that the sustainability of the training and initiatives that must be put in place to ensure that they are continuously monitored and updated with the training opportunities and skills that are relevant to them. Thanks.
No, absolutely. You're right. So, Eklavya, that throws a little bit of a curveball towards you, because, Mr. Siva talking about personalization. Okay, everybody wants, because it has to fit to my requirements. Show me the benefits, because I'm not sure what I learned today is going to help me tomorrow. Continuous learning is what he touched on, right? Okay, and last but not least, connectivity. So, how can you help?
Wonderful. And that's a good segue to my response. And Mr. Siva touched upon two things which are very relevant. One is the rapid change with which things are changing outside. So you cannot plan for next 3 years. You have to plan for next 6 months. And that's a big problem. And second is the other point that Mr. Siva mentioned was, how do we make sure that the content is relevant for specific role? Because it can't be a generic content and generic skill. So we're trying to solve for these two problems, and I'll just touch upon each of them very briefly. First is knowing what to learn. As we were discussing, there's so much happening outside every 6 months. It is very difficult for an individual and an organization to figure out what are the skills relevant for their organization. So what we do is we try to solve this and help the organizations in two different ways. One is we look at the content which is being consumed by our learners on our platform. And given that there are more than 160 million learners on our platform, that gives us a good insight on what are the skills relevant for different roles in different geographies. So that's what we do, and propagate that and help the organizations know that these skills are important. We also work with the external agencies like our content partners, which are Google, IBM, Microsoft, etc., which are industry leaders, and also organizations such as World Economic Forum to come out with annual reports which clearly identifies which are the skills relevant for a particular segment, particular region, etc. So this solves for the first problem, knowing what skills are important. Second, as Mr. Siva said, while we know the skill, but which skill for which role? I mean, data science is a broad subject, but data analyst, business analyst, data engineer are three different roles. So which skill is relevant for which role? So to solve for that, we have already identified 300 plus different roles in our platform. And depending on a role, the skill is already defined, the skill level and proficiency level is already defined, and also the learning path is defined, so that if three of us are trying to learn data science for different roles, all three of us will have three different learning paths. So that solves for the contextualization of the problem. And third is around contextualization in general, because a lot of the content providers would be global in nature. But for example, in Malaysia, if Mr. Siva wants to have something content which is more local, which is more contextualized to their policies, what we have done on our platform is now we are giving the ability for the organizations to create their own private content on Coursera platform, which can be consumed privately for their organization. It will not be available for public in general, but they can use the content which is already there on Coursera platform and merge it with their own private content to make the learning more contextualized. So these are some of the ways with which we are trying to solve for these problems.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense because it's all about personalization. So let's talk about the future, if we may, okay? Because I think that's important. It's always about today and tomorrow is the future. Exactly what you said, Eklavya. It's not 3 years down the road, it's 6 months now. So as we look, let's say, at a 6 months window, how can governments, educational institutions, and industry leaders collaborate effectively to bridge the gaps, scale training programs, and align with national digital transformation goals while driving lasting impact for the Malaysian public sector? Mr. Siva, let me come to you first, please.
Okay, let me just take this straight to the point. I think what is important, be it for public sector or Malaysia in general, I think we need to have a unified vision for that digital transformation to happen. I think having a unified vision will ensure that we could improve our digital literacy and foster innovation and position Malaysia as a regional leader in adopting emerging technologies, as you mentioned earlier, all those AIs, cloud computing, and IoT, more comprehensively together with partnering both public and private sector. I think this is very important. Secondly, this also to touch upon a little bit on the public-private partnerships. I think this will ensure that we could bring industry expertise into government upskilling initiatives by working with industry leaders, and the government can gain access to best practice and workshop spaces, equipment, and technological infrastructure that enhances the digital training programs for public sector employees. Third, I would say a more centralized coordination, because even within government, we could see that there could be some gaps in ensuring how do we really ensure that the 1.6 million government employees gets equal access and also the opportunity. So there needs to be a coordinated effort to ensure that at least certain level of digital literacy is provided for them. And that is very important. And also some form of policy support and regulatory frameworks to ensure that the training and skilling is really built into a mechanism where there is a tracking, and probably even to include it in the performance management to ensure that they don't lack in terms of equipping themselves with these skills. And probably one of the last thing is to ensure that we have an industry-informed curriculum by having a good partnership with the private sector, especially the academic side, and also the training providers and so on. And finally, to ensure that this reaches all the government servants or civil service, we have to provide, or what do you say, we need to invest more in terms of having learning platforms, virtual labs, and so on, so that while we could, and while what I'm trying to say is that could provide more opportunity for all to access regardless where they are, in terms of need not having to be present physically. I think all this would ensure that we could have a better skilling opportunities for all.
No, I agree, sir. You're right. It should be remote. It should be accessible 24/7. It should be seamless. It should be personalized, and that's what's going to help them on this journey, because this is a journey. Eklavya, how are you guys helping in that space, sir?
Yeah, and when we look at upskilling at a large scale, because when we think about public sector, we need to look at capacity building, because in just Malaysia alone, Mr. Siva said 1.5 million. Think about different countries. There are millions of public sector employees who need to be upskilled. And I think there are three things that we need to look at. So we talked about industry, we talked about government. I'll also add academia into this mix because all three need to work together. And there are two or three things that need to happen. First is there are policy changes that need to happen at the education level. So even before somebody joins a public sector, are those students or graduates ready to join public sector? Which means, is the curriculum changing every 2 to 3 years, every year, to make sure that they are learning something which is relevant for their roles? And many educational departments and ministries are taking steps to make sure that they are giving flexibility to the universities to consume external content, online content, so that their curriculum is relevant. So that's one. Second, Mr. Siva talked about industry, learning from the industry. And not every employee can go to a company and learn, but there's a way through online learning, because now industry micro-credentials are available. So if I want to learn about digital media, or I want to learn about social media marketing, I can learn from Facebook. If I want to learn about data analysis, I can learn from Google. So that's a way for the public sector employees to learn from the industries as well. So leveraging industry micro-credentials in a big way is something that needs to happen. And third is, I think equally important, is to figure out if there is a skills qualification framework. Because when we talk to different countries today in Asia, we are seeing that the governments are taking step to having a standardized skills qualification framework, so that as an individual, when I develop a skill, I know that I will be ready for a particular role, whether it's in industry or in public sector or specific government job. So that as an individual, I know what I need to learn. And when I learn something, I know that I am ready for that role. So having a specific qualification framework is also important.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're absolutely right. What everybody's looking for is milestones. At what milestone do I achieve what? And if I can go down that pathway and invest my time and my effort, and exactly what you're saying, personalizing it, right? We've got to come to that level where we've got the technology that can help personalize the courses a individual needs to upskill themselves, to keep themselves future ready. Gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I think that's been highly enlightening. I wish you both the best on the journey as you collaborate to help Malaysia's public sector go to the next chapter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.